Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world where gods walk among mortals, where the rhythm of the Nile dictates not just the seasons, but the fates of kings, farmers, and dreamers alike. Egyptian mythology is more than a collection of stories. It is a living tapestry of human aspiration, divine intrigue, and the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Sit back, relax, and let yourself drift along the banks of this ancient river, where the first tales of creation echo through time. In the beginning, say the myths, there was only a vast, silent expanse of water, a formless void that the Egyptians called none. From this primordial chaos emerged Atom, the self-created, whose solitary existence gave birth to the first gods through acts of thought, speech, or, in some versions, physical creation. These deities, from Shu, the airy separator of heaven and earth, to Tefnut, the moisture that nourished life, were not distant abstractions, they were intimate forces that governed everything from the wind on the desert, sands to the rising and setting of the sun. Some researchers believe that these creation myths were deeply connected to the cycles of the Nile, the flooding and receding waters symbolizing life, death, and rebirth, while others suggest they reflect an ancient attempt to reconcile the mysteries of existence with observable nature. As we drift further, we encounter the divine family trees that twist and interlock like the coils of a serpent. Osiris, god of the afterlife, and his sister wife Isis embody love, loyalty, and the fragile balance of power. Their story is one of murder, deception, resurrection, an ultimate triumph, a narrative that resonated not just as entertainment, but as a moral and spiritual framework for the people of Egypt. Seth, the chaotic brother, represents the unpredictable forces that threaten this balance, a reminder that even gods are not immune to strife. From one myth to the next, these tales are not static. They evolve across centuries, reshaped by dynasties, foreign influence, and the human imagination. The Egyptians did not simply tell stories, they lived them through rituals, temples, and festivals that allowed ordinary mortals to participate in divine drama, to witness and perhaps even touch the eternal. Yet, as we listen to these ancient whispers, one question lingers. What truths hide beneath these tales of gods and monsters? And how much of their wisdom was meant to be understood only in the silent, hallowed chambers of a temple, far from prying eyes? The answers, like the Nile itself, seem to flow endlessly, carrying mysteries downstream that may never fully reach the shore. As we leave the primordial waters behind, let us enter the realm of the sun, the great celestial orb that Egyptians revered not just as a source of light, but as a living god, Ra, whose journey across the sky was a daily miracle and nightly peril. Imagine standing in the early morning desert, the horizon glowing orange and gold, as Ra rises in his solar bark, pulling the world into motion with each radiant stroke of his divine oar. By day he travels across the heavens, illuminating fields, temples, and cities, but by night he descends into the shadowy underworld, the Duat, where darkness reigns and dangers multiply. Here, the scale of imagination stretches. The underworld is a labyrinth of tunnels, lakes of fire, and serpentine guardians, all of which Ra must confront to rise again with the dawn. Some researchers suggest that this nightly journey symbolizes the eternal cycles of life, death, and renewal, a mirror of the agricultural rhythms that sustained Egyptian civilization, while others believe it encodes metaphysical truths about the soul's journey after death. Alongside Ra, we encounter a host of accompanying deities, the falcon-headed Horus guiding the bark, protective goddesses warding off chaos, and the serpent Apophis, embodiment of destructive darkness, ever seeking to devour the sun and plunge the world into endless night. Initiates in mystery cults and temple rituals would meditate on these cosmic dramas, experiencing symbolic death and rebirth that echoed Ra's own nightly trials, seeking personal transformation and glimpses of divine immortality. The imagery is precise, yet vast. The stars overhead are not distant specks of light, but divine markers, mapping the heavens in patterns that tell stories of power, morality, and destiny. Temples across Egypt, from Heliopolis to Dendor, preserved these cosmic insights in intricate reliefs, ceilings mapped with astronomical charts, and hieroglyphs that encoded secret knowledge for those trained to read them. Even the mortal kings, the pharaohs, were drawn into this celestial narrative, regarded as earthly embodiments of Horus during life and as Osiris in death, linking the human and divine in a continuum that spanned generations. As the sun's bark moves through the duat, facing serpents, demons, and gates guarded by vigilant gods, we begin to sense the delicate balance the Egyptians perceived between order, chaos, life, and death. And so, as the night closes in and the moon casts a pale reflection on the Nile, one must wonder, are these tales merely allegories, or do they point to deeper truths about the universe, hidden in plain sight within temples, texts, and the silence of the desert? The journey of Ra, like the Nile itself, continues without end, inviting us to follow, to question, and to marvel. Next we move from the blazing journey of Ra to the shadowed halls of the underworld, where Osiris, the god of death, resurrection, and eternal life, rules over the duat with quiet authority. Picture entering a vast, dimly lit corridor carved from stone, the air thick with incense, where every hieroglyph tells a fragment of a story older than memory itself. Osiris, often depicted as a serene, mummified figure, holds the crook and flail, symbols of kingship and divine judgment, presiding over a realm where the living and the dead meet, where souls must prove their worth and find balance against the scales of Marat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. Some researchers suggest that Osiris myth represents humanity's deep-seated desire to understand what lies beyond death, a spiritual blueprint offering hope of regeneration, while others interpret it as an allegory for the fertile Nile, which dies and is reborn each year, sustaining life and civilization. The underworld is a labyrinth of peril and beauty, rivers of ink-black water, islands of luminous gems, and gates guarded by monstrous beings that challenge both courage and morality. Initiates in Egyptian mystery religions might experience symbolic descents into this world through ritual, confronting fear and emerging with a renewed sense of self, a promise of immortality echoing Osiris's own resurrection after betrayal and murder by his jealous brother. Set. The story is layered. Set, representing chaos and violence, disrupts the harmony of life, while Isis, Osiris' devoted sister and wife, undertakes an epic quest to restore him, invoking spells, charms, and divine intervention, showing the power of loyalty, intelligence, and ritual magic in overcoming destruction. Temples dedicated to Osiris, from Abydos to Philae, were not mere buildings. They were immersive theaters of cosmic narrative, their walls adorned with reliefs depicting Osiris' death, judgment scenes, and resurrection cycles, allowing priests and worshippers to witness and participate in eternal truths. The sensory landscape is overwhelming. The scent of oils and incense, the echo of chanting priests, the flickering torchlight revealing intricate carvings of gods and mortals entwined in eternal drama. Even in later periods, as Greek and Roman influences spread across Egypt, these myths retained their potency, merging subtly with philosophical and spiritual ideas from across the Mediterranean. And as we contemplate the duat, the underworld's quiet majesty and hidden dangers, we are left with a question that lingers like the incense smoke in a silent tomb. What does it mean to die, to be judged, and to rise again? And can the ancient Egyptians' vision of life beyond death teach us something still undiscovered about the mysteries that govern existence itself? From the shadowed depths of Osiris's domain, we turn our gaze to the goddess Isis, whose story radiates both power and tenderness, weaving magic and devotion into a tapestry that captivated the ancient world. Sit back, relax, and imagine walking through a temple where every surface gleams with gold leaf, where the carved eyes of the goddess seem to follow you, promising protection and wisdom. Isis was not merely a figure of myth. She became the embodiment of divine motherhood, magical prowess, and unyielding perseverance. Her mythological journey begins with grief and determination. After Set murders her brother and husband Osiris, Isis embarks on a relentless quest to recover his dismembered body, traveling across rivers, deserts, and sacred lands, guided by intuition, ritual, and her profound connection to the divine. Some scholars believe her story symbolizes the enduring power of love and restoration, while others suggest it reflects the rhythms of the natural world, the Nile cycles mirrored in her ability to bring life from death. Her magic is intricate and precise, drawing upon secret words, gestures, and amulets, hinting at a worldview where knowledge, ritual, and intention can shape reality itself. In the Greco-Roman world, Isis worship expanded far beyond the banks of the Nile, captivating distant cities and empires with mystery rites that promised personal salvation and communion with the divine. Initiates would experience symbolic trials, perhaps even death and rebirth, mirroring Isis' mastery over life and death, her power to reconcile chaos into order, and her ability to protect and guide those who called upon her. Temples dedicated to Isis were centers not only of worship, but of learning and cultural preservation, storing medical knowledge, magical texts, and artistic traditions that echoed the sophistication of ancient Egyptian civilization. Even in stone, paint, and ritual, one can sense the tension between secrecy and revelation, the careful balance of what is shown to the public and what remains hidden for the initiated few. The goddess image, often crowned with a throne or sun disk, radiates authority and comfort, a reminder that even in times of loss or turmoil, there exists the potential for renewal and transcendence. As the mystery cults spread across the Mediterranean, Isis became a bridge between worlds, a living testament to the human desire for immortality, spiritual understanding, and the guidance of forces greater than ourselves. And as we leave her temple and the soft echo of chanting fades behind us, a question lingers in the mind like the last rays of a setting sun. How much of our own longing for protection, wisdom, and renewal mirrors the devotion that sustained the worship of Isis for thousands of years? As we drift from the luminous presence of Isis, our journey moves into the darker, more enigmatic realms of Egyptian mythology, where death, judgment, and the afterlife dominate the imagination. Picture, if you will, the silent tombs of the Valley of the Kings, where the air is cool and still, the stone walls echoing faint whispers of prayers and spells recited thousands of years ago. At the center of this realm stands Osiris, god of the afterlife, whose story is intertwined with concepts of death, resurrection, and cosmic balance. Sit back and imagine the textures of papyrus scrolls covered in intricate hieroglyphs, the faint scent of incense lingering in sacred chambers, and the ceremonial tools polished to a dull gleam by countless ritual hands. Osiris was more than a deity. He was a living symbol of the cycle of life and death, embodying the eternal promise that even in destruction, renewal awaits. Some researchers suggest that his myth reflects the agricultural rhythms of Egypt, the flooding and receding of the Nile mirrored in his death and rebirth, while others see a profound philosophical meditation on morality, divine justice, and the human soul. The weighing of the heart ceremony, a ritual imagined in exquisite detail on tomb walls, illustrates this balance. The deceased's heart, the seat of conscience, is weighed against the feather of Mat, the principle of truth and cosmic order. Should the heart prove light, unburdened by sin, the soul is permitted to enter the eternal fields of bliss, joining the company of the gods. Those whose hearts are heavy, however, face annihilation, consumed by Ammit, the devourer, a terrifying amalgam of crocodile, lion, and hippopotamus. Temples, tombs, and mortuary texts served as guides for navigating this perilous journey, offering prayers, spells, and protective charms to ensure safe passage. Egyptian artisans meticulously painted walls with scenes of Osiris enthroned, the gods surrounding him in solemn assembly, conveying both reverence and awe. Even centuries later, these images resonate with a haunting beauty, reminding us of humanity's timeless preoccupation with mortality and what lies beyond. As the sun sets behind the arid horizon, casting long shadows over temple columns, we are left to ponder. How did a civilization so ancient conceive of the afterlife with such meticulous care? And what does this tell us about the universal human desire to find order, justice, and hope in the face of death? From the shadowed halls of Osiris, our journey turns to the sun-drenched brilliance of Ra, the radiant god whose daily voyage across the sky defined the rhythm of life in ancient Egypt. Imagine the warmth of golden light spilling over the desert sands, the glint of sun on the Nile's surface, and the sense of awe that ancient Egyptians must have felt as they witnessed the sunrise. Ra was not merely a celestial body, he was the very embodiment of creation and cosmic order, a force whose presence ensured the survival of all living things. Some scholars believe that Ra's daily journey in his solar bark symbolized the eternal struggle between light and darkness, life and death, while others suggest it reflected the Egyptians' keen observation of astronomy and the natural world, encoded into ritual and myth. As he sailed through the sky, Ra was accompanied by protective deities and fierce serpents, warding off Apophis, the serpent of chaos, whose nightly attempts to devour the sun threatened to plunge the world into disorder. The imagery is vivid, serpentine forms twisting around the bark, divine figures with gleaming eyes and gilded headdresses, and the serene, commanding presence of Ra himself, his solar disk radiating power and authority. Temples dedicated to Ra, such as Heliopolis, became centers of both worship and astronomical observation, preserving the intricate knowledge of the heavens that the Egyptians meticulously recorded. Priests performed elaborate daily rituals, offering food, incense, and hymns, ensuring the sun's safe passage and the continuation of life on earth. Ra's mythos was intertwined with other gods as well. His connection to Amun-Ra and later integration with Horus illustrated the adaptability and fluidity of Egyptian theology, reflecting a civilization attuned to both spiritual and political harmonies. Artistic depictions capture his majesty, falcon-headed forms crowned with the solar disk, barks gliding across painted skies, and sacred symbols etched into temple walls to secure divine favor. Yet, behind the brilliance, there lingers a sense of fragility, the knowledge that cosmic balance is perpetually contested, that life is sustained by vigilance, ritual, and reverence. As we watch the sun sink below the horizon, shadows stretching across the Nile, we are reminded that the Egyptians' understanding of the cosmos was both practical and mystical, blending observation, theology, and imagination. And so, with journey complete and the threat of Apophis looming in the darkness, we turn our attention to the gods who dwell not in the sky, but in the hidden recesses of the world, the guardians of death, the keepers of secrets, and the enigmatic forces that lie just beyond the veil of mortal perception. Next we move to the shadowed realm of the afterlife, a place where the gods of death and judgment held sway, and where the mysteries of existence extended far beyond the mortal coil. The Egyptian understanding of death was not a simple end, but a passage into a complex, layered world presided over by Osiris, the lord of the underworld, whose green-hued form symbolized regeneration and eternal life. Picture vast subterranean halls carved from stone, walls adorned with intricate hieroglyphs and scenes of judgment, the faint scent of incense lingering in the air as priests chanted prayers to guide the souls of the departed. Some researchers suggest that these depictions of the afterlife were more than symbolic. They may have served as detailed maps for the deceased, guiding them through perils, trials, and divine examinations on their journey to immortality. The famous weighing of the heart ceremony encapsulates the delicate balance between morality and fate. The heart of the deceased placed upon scales, weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. Here, every action, every thought, and every word of a lifetime was accounted for, and the heart that failed this test was devoured by Amit, the fearsome devourer of the dead, a hybrid creature whose hunger embodied the consequences of moral failure. Tombs such as those in the Valley of the Kings were designed as both final resting places and spiritual fortresses, filled with texts, amulets, and protective spells intended to safeguard the journey of the soul. From the Book of the Dead to funerary figurines, the material culture of death illustrates a civilization profoundly invested in ensuring the continuity of life beyond the mortal realm. Yet, the underworld was not merely a place of trial and danger. It was also a realm of potential transformation, where the initiate could emerge renewed, akin to Osiris himself, who had triumphed over death to become king of the dead. These narratives infused everyday Egyptian life with a quiet urgency, a reminder that existence was measured not only in years, but in the alignment of one's heart and actions with the eternal order. The underworld gods were often depicted with animalistic traits, falcon heads, jackal forms, and serpentine bodies, their appearances both mesmerizing and unsettling, a visual language of mystery meant to evoke awe and respect. As we linger on the threshold between life and death, we are left to wonder, how did the Egyptians reconcile the terrifying uncertainty of the afterlife with the promise of immortality? And what secrets of the soul remain hidden in the shadowed corridors of Osiris' domain, waiting for those bold enough to seek them? From one mystery to the next, we turn our attention to the intricate web of Egyptian creation myths, stories that attempted to explain the origins of the universe, the gods, and humankind itself. and that unfolded across different regions with subtle variations that hint at the rich tapestry of belief woven over millennia. In Heliopolis, the Ennead spoke of Atum, the self-created god who rose from the primordial waters of Nun, bringing forth Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture, whose union produced Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky, setting in motion the cosmic order that structured existence. Imagine the texture of the Nile's waters at dawn, shimmering as if infused with the life force that these myths sought to personify, and the sounds of birds awakening in the papyrus reeds, echoing the rhythm of creation itself. Some scholars suggest that the Egyptians conceived time not as linear, but cyclical, a series of eternal repetitions where creation, destruction, and renewal coexisted in a delicate balance, mirrored in the rising and setting of the sun and the changing seasons. Along the river banks, in Hermopolis, a different tradition spoke of the Ogdoad, 8 deities embodying primordial elements such as darkness, infinity, and chaos, whose interplay generated the first mound of land. Emerging from the endless waters, a symbol of order emerging from disorder. Across these narratives, we see recurring themes: the tension between chaos and order, the essential role of the gods in sustaining the universe, and the profound connection between the natural world and divine forces. The Egyptians often depicted these myths visually, with hieroglyphs and temple reliefs conveying not only stories but the philosophical essence of existence, combining human, animal, and cosmic symbolism in a language that was at once precise and enigmatic. The creation myths were more than abstract tales. They provided a framework for ritual practice, grounding festivals, prayers, and temple ceremonies in the rhythms of the cosmos, and reminding the people that their lives, work, and worship were threads in a vast, eternal tapestry. As we imagine the sun's golden disk ascending over the fertile Nile Valley and the intricate dance of gods and elements that preceded it, we are confronted with a question that resonates through time. How did these stories, told and retold across centuries, shape the way Egyptians perceived their world, their place within it, and the unseen forces that governed the mysteries of life, death, and rebirth? Next, we move from the sweeping canvas of creation to the intimate, haunting tales of the Osiris myth, a story that permeated every aspect of Egyptian religious thought, resonating with themes of betrayal, death, and resurrection that would echo through millennia. Osiris, the benevolent king of the gods, symbolized fertility, the life-giving power of the Nile, and the promise of order over chaos. Yet his brother Seth, embodying violence, disorder, and ambition, conspired to dismantle that order, murdering Osiris in a calculated act of treachery. Picture the texture of ancient papyrus under the fingertips of a scribe recording this divine drama, the crisp sound of reed brushes gliding over ink, capturing each twist of fate, each subtle emotion etched into the narrative. Isis, the devoted sister and wife, embarked on a relentless search for Osiris's scattered body parts, weaving together the fragments with spells and incantations whispered into the wind, restoring him not only to life but to his role as lord of the afterlife. A cycle of death and rebirth mirrored in the rhythms of crops, floods, and human existence. Some researchers suggest that the myth served a dual purpose, both as a moral allegory, illustrating the triumph of loyalty, love, and order over betrayal and chaos, and as a ritual template, guiding priests in ceremonies that mirrored Osiris' resurrection, allowing initiates to symbolically participate in his triumph and glimpse the promise of immortality. Temples dedicated to Osiris, such as Abydos, became pilgrimage centers, their darkened sanctuaries filled with the scent of incense and the low murmur of chanting. Offering initiates a sensory immersion in a story that was simultaneously personal, political, and cosmic. The walls of these temples depicted every phase of the Osiris cycle with remarkable detail. Seth's cunning, Isis's unwavering devotion, Horus's eventual vengeance, and the ultimate restoration of balance, a visual narrative reinforcing the idea that divine order could be maintained through ritual, moral conduct, and communal memory. Artists and priests worked meticulously to encode not just the myth itself, but also symbolic references to agricultural cycles, celestial movements, and human mortality, creating a layered, almost hypnotic experience for those who entered these sacred spaces. As we imagine the quiet reverence of a nighttime procession through shadowed corridors, the flickering torchlight revealing carved figures frozen in eternal struggle, we are left to wonder how much of our own understanding of life, death, and the possibility of what lies beyond was shaped by the meticulous devotion to a god who died only to rise again. And how did this myth, repeated in whispered prayers and grand festivals, prepare a civilization to confront the mysteries of existence itself? From the tale of Osiris, we drift into the enigmatic world of Isis, the goddess whose presence stretched across continents and centuries, captivating hearts and minds with her promise of protection, wisdom, and spiritual transformation. Sit back, relax, and imagine the scent of burning oils mingling with the cool Nile breeze as initiates approached her temple, drawn not just by obligation but by the profound hope of personal communion with the divine. Unlike the more rigid, state-centered rituals of early Egyptian religion, the mysteries of Isis offered something intensely personal, the possibility of transformation, of renewal, and even the tantalizing promise of immortality. Some scholars suggest that these mystery cults represented a subtle rebellion against the strict hierarchy of traditional temples, focusing on individual spiritual journeys rather than the collective maintenance of cosmic order. Initiation ceremonies were elaborate, blending mythological narratives with symbolic acts of death and rebirth, where participants might be submerged in waters, shrouded in darkness, or guided through shadowed chambers, experiencing in microcosm the goddess's trials and triumphs. Every gesture, every whispered chant, was designed to awaken something latent within the initiate, to mirror Isis's mastery over life and death, chaos and order. Her temples across the Greco-Roman world from Alexandria to Rome served as hubs of both devotion and cultural exchange, transmitting not only theological ideas but also practical knowledge, healing techniques, magical practices, and artistic motifs that carried the essence of Egyptian civilization into distant lands. Apollos in the Golden As describes the meticulous attention given to the preparation of sacred spaces, the care with which ritual implements were crafted, each imbued with symbolic resonance and the weight of centuries of tradition. Initiates were guided through labyrinthine corridors, past hieroglyphs that whispered secrets of the cosmos, through chambers where the air seemed thick with memory and expectation. Each step a subtle journey between mortality and divinity. Some researchers believe that the spread of Isis worship helped bridge cultural divides, integrating Greek philosophical concepts of purification and enlightenment with deeply Egyptian notions of magic, the afterlife, and cosmic balance. As night falls over the imagined landscapes of these ancient cities, the mysteries of Isis persist like a quiet, enduring hum beneath the surface of history, a gentle but insistent reminder that the human yearning to understand death, to grasp the threads of destiny, and to touch the divine has never faded. And yet, as the doors of her temples closed behind the last initiates of the Roman period, one must wonder what secrets, whispered in shadow and secrecy, vanished with them, and which of these ancient truths might still echo in ways we have yet to recognize. Next we move to the intricate labyrinth of temples and sacred spaces that formed the backbone of Egyptian religious life, where every stone, every carving, and every painted surface was charged with meaning, each a silent witness to millennia of devotion and human striving to understand the mysteries of existence. Picture, if you will, the Temple of Hathor at Den, its massive columns rising like petrified reeds, their surfaces alive with hieroglyphs and celestial motifs, the air filled with the faint scent of incense and the distant murmur of chanting priests. Constructed during the Roman period but steeped in timeless Egyptian architectural and theological principles, Dendera preserved not only the rituals of Hathor but the very essence of pharaonic religion, maintaining a continuity that spanned centuries. Within its halls, astronomical ceilings recorded the movements of stars and planets according to meticulous Egyptian calculations, a testament to the civilization's intimate dialogue with the cosmos, while reliefs immortalized mythological cycles that might otherwise have been lost amid the sweeping changes of the Hellenistic world. Hidden chambers and crypts safeguarded sacred implements, ritual vessels, and statuary, accessible only to those who had undergone proper initiation and possessed the moral and spiritual qualifications to handle such power. Workshops within these subterranean sanctuaries allowed priests to continue the manufacture of ritual objects according to ancient specifications, ensuring that each item, from the smallest amulet to the largest cult statue, was imbued with precise symbolic and magical intent. The temple functioned not only as a center of worship, but as a hub of knowledge, where religious, astronomical, and medicinal insights converged, demonstrating the inseparable link between spiritual and practical life in ancient Egypt. Researchers suggest that these temples were far more than places of ceremony. They were living repositories of cultural memory, preserving the intellectual and artistic achievements of generations while adapting to the changing needs of society under foreign rule. And yet, as one wanders mentally through these corridors, it becomes apparent that the temple's secrets were layered and profound, accessible only to those willing to engage with the mysteries fully, to move beyond surface appearances and enter a world where myth and reality interwove seamlessly. As dusk settles over the imagined landscape of Den and shadows creep across its decorated walls, we are left with a lingering question: what knowledge, what experiences, and what transformative insights were claimed by those who walked these halls in centuries long past, and which of their discoveries might still resonate in ways invisible, yet undeniably potent, even today. From the shadowed sanctuaries of Dendera, we now turn our gaze to the towering temple of Horus at Edfu, a monumental testament to the persistence and sophistication of Egyptian religious tradition. Constructed over nearly 2 centuries during the TMIC period, where each wall, column, and doorway is laden with intricate carvings that document the civilization's mythology, rituals, and cosmology in unprecedented detail. Imagine walking along its sandstone avenues, the faint echo of sandals against stone mingling with imagined whispers of the past, as massive reliefs depict the eternal struggle between Horus and Seth, a cosmic drama of order and chaos enacted not in some distant realm but within the very architecture that housed the faithful. These walls contain what could only be described as an encyclopedic record of Egyptian religious knowledge, encompassing creation myths, divine genealogies, festival calendars, and precise ritual instructions, offering later generations an invaluable window into practices that had been meticulously maintained for millennia. Some scholars suggest that the festivals reenacted at Edfu, drawing participants from across Upper Egypt, were more than theatrical spectacle. They were immersive experiences meant to align human consciousness with divine cycles, to embody the triumph of order over chaos, and to reaffirm social and spiritual cohesion. The temple's inscriptions also preserve magical procedures, spellcraft, and the procedural knowledge required to invoke divine presence, blending practical and spiritual domains into a seamless whole. One can almost sense the energy of these ancient ceremonies, the deliberate choreography of movement and chant, the interplay of shadow and light on the reliefs, and the rhythmic pulse of drums or clapping echoing through the hypostyle halls. These spaces functioned as living laboratories of religious experience, where priests, initiates, and participants engaged directly with myth, enacting stories that held transformative potential. Edfu, like other major temples, demonstrates how Egyptian religious practice was both conservative and adaptive, while ritual forms and mythological content were preserved with astonishing fidelity. The temples themselves adapted to political and cultural shifts, integrating Hellenistic influences without sacrificing their essential character. As we linger mentally beneath Edfu's towering columns, tracing the carved narratives of gods and humans, one cannot help but wonder, how deeply did these mythic enactments shape the consciousness of those who participated? And what aspects of their spiritual understanding have echoed across centuries, waiting quietly to be rediscovered, as though the walls themselves hold secrets that defy the passage of time. Next, we move from the grandeur of Edfu to the intimate, shadowed spaces of Egyptian temple crypts, hidden chambers where the most sacred objects and ritual implements were kept, shielded from the eyes of the uninitiated, and where the air would have been thick with the scent of incense. The soft glow of oil lamps flickering against walls covered in hieroglyphs that seemed to whisper secrets of life, death, and divine power. These subterranean sanctuaries were more than mere storage spaces. They were repositories of knowledge, craftsmanship, and spiritual potency, where priests meticulously maintained continuity with the ancient traditions of pharaonic Egypt. Within these chambers, objects were not simply tools or decorations, they were extensions of divine presence, imbued with the symbolic power to mediate between the mortal and immortal realms, to enforce cosmic order, or to facilitate transformation. Some researchers suggest that the rituals conducted in these hidden spaces involved complex sequences of purification, chanting, and symbolic actions, intended to awaken divine forces or to mirror the cyclical processes of death and rebirth seen in mythological narratives. The creation of these sacred objects was itself a spiritual act. Workshops within the temple complex continued to craft amulets, statues, and ritual implements according to specifications that had been codified over centuries, preserving not only the technical skills but also the metaphysical intentions embedded within every curve, inscription, and pigment. It is here, in these quiet, often unseen spaces, that the Egyptians' profound understanding of symbolism and ritual can be most keenly felt, as though the very air vibrates with accumulated centuries of devotion, secrecy, and mystical purpose. The crypts of temples like Dendera and Philae also illustrate the careful balance between accessibility and restriction in Egyptian religious life, The ordinary worshipper participated in festivals and observed rituals, yet only a select few, properly trained and initiated, could interact with the objects that held the most potent spiritual significance. This tension between openness and secrecy, between communal observance and individual mastery, reflects a sophisticated conception of religious experience, where the sacred is layered, protected, and gradually revealed according to merit, knowledge, and moral standing. As we imagine stepping lightly through these shadowed halls, tracing our fingers along the cool stone of ritual altars and hidden chambers, a question lingers in the mind. How much of this concealed power and knowledge was truly understood by those who entered? And how many of the mysteries contained within these crypts remain veiled, even to this day, waiting silently for those who might seek them with reverence, patience, and courage? From the hidden crypts we emerge into the open, sun-drenched courtyards of Egyptian temples, where the rhythms of daily life, ceremony, and devotion intersected with the architectural grandeur of the sacred complexes, and where priests, attendants, and worshippers moved with purpose under the shadow of towering pylons and intricately carved columns that told stories of gods, kings, and cosmic struggles. The temples were not merely places of worship. They were living centers of cultural preservation, education, and artistic expression, where every statue, relief, and hieroglyphic inscription served as both a functional element of ritual and a symbolic representation of eternal truths. Some researchers argue that the alignment of temple structures with celestial bodies, the rising and setting of particular stars, the solstices and equinoxes, was more than decorative. It was a deliberate embodiment of cosmic order, a mirror of the heavens on earth designed to synchronize human activity with the divine rhythms of the universe. Within these expansive courtyards, processions unfolded during festivals, with priests carrying sacred images of deities, musicians and singers filling the air with ritual sounds, and communities gathering to witness dramatizations of mythological events, bringing stories of creation, conflict, and triumph into the lived experience of the people. The sheer scale of these events and the meticulous attention to ritual detail speaks to a society deeply invested in maintaining harmony between the mortal and divine worlds. Even the placement of altars, the types of offerings, and the timing of ceremonial actions were all codified in ways that reflected both theological significance and practical considerations, blending art, science, and spirituality in seamless unity. The courtyards themselves, often decorated with lush gardens, sacred animals, and water features, provided spaces for reflection, teaching, and meditation, reminding participants of the interconnectedness of life, death, and divine oversight. As we wander mentally through these spaces, imagining the heat of the sun on stone, the scent of burning oils, the murmur of prayers and chants, we begin to sense that the Egyptians' conception of sacred space was holistic, designed to engage all the senses and the imagination. And yet, despite the visibility and accessibility of these grand complexes, the true power and knowledge of the temples remained layered, carefully protected within restricted areas, and transmitted only to those trained to understand and honor it. So, as we step back from the bustling courtyards into the silent shadows beyond, one must ask, what hidden wisdom might these vast sunlit spaces conceal, quietly waiting to reveal themselves to the observant and the patient? And how much of the sacred knowledge of Egypt still lies just beyond the grasp of modern understanding? Next, we move into the quiet, dimly lit inner sanctums of the Egyptian temples, spaces deliberately designed to evoke awe and reverence, where the walls are thick with layers of symbolism, and the air is heavy with incense and the echoes of whispered prayers. These inner chambers, accessible only to the initiated priests and select temple officials, were the heart of religious life, where the most sacred rituals were performed and where the boundaries between the mortal and divine worlds seemed to dissolve. Some scholars suggest that the design of these sanctuaries, often consisting of narrow corridors, hidden rooms, and secretive alcoves, served to heighten the psychological and spiritual experience, guiding initiates through a journey of anticipation, reflection, and ultimate revelation. Here, the mysteries of the gods were enacted with precision. Offerings were made, chants intoned, and sacred objects statues. Ritual implements were handled according to strict protocols that ensured both spiritual efficacy and social hierarchy. The interplay of light and shadow within these spaces, filtered through carefully positioned openings and high-relief carvings, created an environment where perception was sharpened and the presence of the divine felt immediate and tangible. Within these chambers, astronomical and mathematical knowledge was also encoded into architectural and decorative schemes, linking celestial movements to the timing of rituals, agricultural cycles, and festivals, revealing a civilization in which science and spirituality were inseparable. Priests trained for decades in these inner centers, mastering not only the ceremonial acts themselves, but also the symbolic language of hieroglyphs, mythological narratives, and magical formulas that gave life to each gesture, each incantation, each offering. Some researchers believe that the act of entering these sacred spaces was itself a transformative experience, a symbolic passage through death and rebirth, mirroring the cycles of the gods, particularly the Osiris myth with its themes of suffering, restoration, and eternal life. Outside these hidden chambers, the temple's more public areas provided a contrasting spectacle of openness, community, and celebration. Yet even here, the underlying currents of cosmic order and divine authority subtly guided every movement and interaction. As we leave the inner sanctum and contemplate the careful layering of access, secrecy, and symbolism, one cannot help but wonder how many generations of wisdom were preserved behind these walls, and what truths of life, death, and the beyond might have been experienced by those who walked these sacred halls in ages long past, mysteries now only partially glimpsed by our modern eyes. From the hidden inner sanctums of the temples, we shift our focus to the grand festivals and public ceremonies that brought the divine into the streets, rivers, and open-air courts of ancient Egypt, where religion was not just a private affair, but a living, breathing spectacle that united communities across the Nile. These festivals, often linked to agricultural cycles, lunar phases, and mythological events, transformed ordinary spaces into stages of cosmic significance, where the gods themselves seemed to descend into human experience. Among the most elaborate were the celebrations of the Osiris myth, in which participants reenacted the death, dismemberment, and resurrection of the god, dramatizing the eternal struggle between life and death, order and chaos. Processions moved through streets lined with spectators, carrying statues of deities adorned with gold, precious stones, and vibrant fabrics, accompanied by musicians, dancers, and priests chanting sacred hymns, creating a sensory spectacle designed to inspire awe and devotion. Some researchers suggest that these public rituals served multiple purposes, reinforcing social cohesion, legitimizing the political authority of pharaohs and providing a visceral education in theological principles, as every movement, gesture, and offering was imbued with layers of symbolic meaning. Observers would witness the interplay of light and shadow as torches flickered along temple walls, incense smoke curling toward the sky, and the rhythmic beat of drums echoing across riverbanks, all contributing to a profound sense of otherworldliness. In addition to dramatizing mythological narratives, festivals often included intricate rites of purification, offerings of food and drink, and communal feasting, blending spiritual observance with practical acts of sustenance and social bonding. Some scholars believe that participation in these festivals allowed ordinary citizens to engage with divine forces in a direct, tangible way, experiencing the gods' presence and favor while reaffirming their connection to the natural and cosmic order. Over time, these celebrations became vital cultural markers, recording the passage of time, the rhythms of life and death, and the enduring values of Egyptian society. Yet, even as these spectacles drew the eyes and hearts of the people, they were shadowed by the mysteries preserved in the inner sanctuary, reminding all who watched that the most profound truths remained concealed, accessible only to those initiated in the secret wisdom of the priests. And as the music fades and the processions disperse, one cannot help but ask, what secrets did the streets themselves hold, and how much of the divine experience was glimpsed only fleetingly, leaving the rest to the imagination and reverent speculation of those who lived under the watchful gaze of the Nile's eternal gods. Next, we move to the enigmatic world of Egyptian funerary practices, a domain where life, death, and the afterlife intertwined in a delicate, ritualized dance designed to secure immortality and divine favor. From the moment of death, elaborate ceremonies unfolded, beginning with the careful washing, anointing, and wrapping of the body, transforming the mortal remains into a vessel worthy of the gods' attention. Some researchers believe that these rituals were more than symbolic. They were thought to actively guide the deceased soul through the perilous landscapes of the underworld, where Osiris awaited as judge and protector. Tombs, whether hidden in the Valley of the Kings or modestly carved into desert cliffs, became complex microcosms of the universe, filled with inscriptions, paintings, and objects intended to assist the departed in their journey. The walls were covered with detailed spells, cosmological diagrams, and mythological narratives drawn from the pyramid texts, coffin texts, and later the Book of the Dead, offering guidance on navigating perilous waters, overcoming demonic guardians, and gaining the favor of celestial judges. Researchers suggest that every amulet, every painted symbol, and every carefully placed vessel held layers of meaning, simultaneously practical and spiritual, ensuring the continuity of the deceased's identity and consciousness. The placement of food, drink, and ritual objects within tombs demonstrated a profound understanding of the relationship between physical needs and spiritual survival, reinforcing the notion that the afterlife mirrored, yet transcended, earthly existence. Among the most mysterious aspects were the mummification techniques themselves. Employing natron resins and intricate wrapping patterns that preserved bodies in astonishing detail, while imbuing them with symbolic significance. Some modern scientists continue to debate the precise combination of materials and methods that allowed this remarkable preservation to endure across millennia. Funerary art captured mythic narratives in vibrant color and intricate design, showing gods interacting with humans, celestial phenomena mapped across ceilings, and scenes of judgment, protection, and triumph over chaos, creating a visual guidebook for eternity. Even the positioning of tombs and the alignment of burial chambers with celestial bodies reflected a sophisticated awareness of astronomy and cosmic cycles, integrating human death into the larger rhythm of the universe. And yet, despite centuries of study, countless tombs remain unexplored or looted, their secrets buried beneath layers of sand and time. As we consider the silent corridors of these eternal resting places, one cannot help but wonder what whispers of forgotten rituals and lost wisdom lie hidden within the stone, waiting for those daring enough to seek the mysteries of life beyond life itself. From the shadowed corridors of tombs, we now turn our gaze to the sacred temples of ancient Egypt, places where the divine and mortal realms intersected in elaborate, orchestrated ceremonies designed to maintain cosmic order and commune with the gods. Unlike the tombs, which were private sanctuaries for the dead, temples functioned as living centers of religious, social, and political life, their massive pylons, colonnaded halls, and sanctuaries rising like islands of stone amid the shifting sands. Some researchers suggest that every architectural element, from the orientation of the temple to the proportions of its columns, was calculated to mirror celestial alignments and cosmic principles, creating spaces where the rhythm of ritual and astronomy converged. Priests, trained from youth in complex music and magical practices, enacted daily ceremonies that fed, clothed, and honored the gods, ensuring that the unseen forces of the universe remained balanced. The scent of incense, the flickering torchlight against polished walls, and the echo of chanting voices created an atmosphere designed to transport participants beyond the ordinary world, immersing them in a living tapestry of myth and divine presence. Temple reliefs and inscriptions recorded intricate mythological narratives, from the creation of the world to the triumphs of gods over chaos, preserving knowledge that was both theological and practical, guiding actions of the living while connecting them to cosmic cycles. Within hidden chambers, sacred relics, ritual implements, and sacred texts were guarded with painstaking care, accessible only to the initiated, ensuring that the mysteries remained potent and exclusive. Festivals punctuated the calendar, drawing communities together in dramatic reenactments of divine stories, where the boundaries between myth and reality blurred, and the gods themselves seemed to walk among their people. Temples such as Karnak, Luxor, and Dendera reveal layers of construction spanning centuries, each edition reflecting evolving theological, artistic, and political priorities, yet preserving core spiritual principles. The interplay between architecture, ritual, and cosmic symbolism suggests a civilization deeply attuned to both the seen and unseen worlds, where every stone, every gesture, and every chant carried layers of meaning that modern eyes can only partially decode. And yet, despite the vastness of these temples and the meticulous records they contain, much remains vowed rituals, unrecorded, sacred knowledge lost, and symbols whose meanings have shifted or faded with time. As the sunlight fades behind towering pylons and the cool shadows of hypostyle halls stretch across carved reliefs, one cannot help but ask what secrets linger in the silent sanctuaries, whispered by centuries of devotion, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover them. Next, we move from the grandeur of temples to the intimate, mysterious world of Egyptian funerary practices, where the line between life and death, seen and unseen, was carefully navigated through ritual, magic, and symbolism. Ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a transition into a complex afterlife, one that required preparation, protection, and knowledge to traverse safely. Tombs, from modest mastabas to colossal pyramids, were constructed as eternal homes for the deceased, but they were far more than simple burial chambers. They were elaborate, self-contained universes, filled with inscriptions, paintings, and objects intended to sustain the soul in the world beyond. The Book of the Dead, a compendium of spells, prayers, and instructions, guided the deceased through the perils of the underworld, detailing encounters with guardians, serpents, and judgment before Osiris, the lord of the afterlife. Mummies were carefully prepared, their bodies treated with oils, resins, and linens to preserve them for eternity, ensuring that the Ba and Ka, spiritual aspects of the individual, could recognize and inhabit the physical form. Some researchers believe that the orientation of the tomb, the placement of offerings, and even the geometry of burial chambers were meticulously designed to align with celestial patterns, mirroring the eternal cycles of the stars and the sun, connecting the deceased with the rhythms of the cosmos. Grave goods ranged from everyday items to amulets and ritual implements, each chosen not only for practicality but also for magical efficacy, intended to protect, guide, and empower the soul on its journey. Tomb walls were adorned with vivid scenes of the deceased interacting with gods, participating in festivals, and performing essential duties, creating a living narrative that allowed the dead to continue their existence in a familiar, ordered environment. Even the act of visiting a tomb, offering food, or reciting prayers was seen as a dynamic interaction, maintaining the bond between the living and the dead, ensuring cosmic harmony. Yet, despite centuries of study, the precise meanings of many funerary symbols remain elusive, and the exact methods by which Egyptians believed they could achieve immortality continue to provoke debate. As we wander through dimly lit corridors lined with hieroglyphs, imagine the silent guardians watching from painted walls, the lingering scent of resin and incense, the soft echo of footsteps in chambers designed to last forever, and consider this: how much of the ancient Egyptian understanding of life, death, and eternity remains hidden beneath layers of stone, sand, and time, waiting for the next curious mind to decipher its secrets. From the hidden depths of tombs, we now turn to the living pulse of ancient Egyptian society, where mythology intertwined with daily life in ways both subtle and profound, shaping not just religious thought but social norms, political authority, and cultural expression. In cities and villages along the Nile, the gods were never distant abstractions. They were active participants in the rhythm of existence, influencing agriculture, health, justice, and family life. Farmers depended on the favor of deities like Osiris and Hathor to ensure the inundation of the Nile brought fertile soil, while merchants and artisans might invoke Thoth for wisdom and precision in their work. Temples, though monumental and awe-inspiring, were also centers of community, where festivals transformed ordinary streets into arenas of cosmic drama, reenacting divine struggles, victories, and reconciliations in vivid spectacle. Some researchers suggest that these rituals were carefully calibrated to mirror natural and celestial cycles, reinforcing a sense of order, stability, and continuity across generations. The pharaoh, as a living god on earth, embodied this connection between heaven and humanity, his authority legitimized by myths that cast him as both descendant and representative of divine forces. Political decrees, judicial rulings, and even monumental building projects were imbued with religious significance, reflecting a worldview in which morality, governance, and the cosmos were inseparably linked. Artistic expression, from wall reliefs to jewelry, carried layers of symbolic meaning, encoding stories of gods and humans, life and death, chaos and order, for those who knew how to read the signs. Priests, scribes, and educated elites became keepers of this sacred knowledge, navigating the complex interplay between tradition and innovation, between the demands of the living and the expectations of the divine. Yet everyday Egyptians, too, engaged with the mythic universe in practical and personal ways, invoking deities in household shrines, offering small votives, or reciting protective spells, a quiet, constant dialogue that connected them to a narrative stretching back thousands of years. As Hellenistic and later Roman influences permeated Egyptian cities, these interactions adapted, blending foreign philosophical ideas with traditional cosmology, creating a fluid religious landscape where identity, devotion, and imagination converged. And so, as we stroll through bustling market streets or quiet courtyards, consider this: each gesture, each prayer, each carefully placed offering was a thread in a tapestry that spanned millennia, a living testament to humanity's attempt to comprehend the divine, to assert order in a vast and often uncertain world, leaving behind questions that still echo across time, inviting us to wonder how deeply the mythic truly shaped the human experience along the Nile. As the centuries turned, the sands of Egypt bore witness to the slow but inexorable transformation of its religious landscape, a shift as subtle as the ebbing of the Nile and as profound as the collapse of dynasties long thought eternal. The rise of Christianity in Egypt did not erase the echoes of ancient deities. Rather, it absorbed, adapted, and reframed them, creating a complex tapestry in which Osiris's resurrection, Isis's protective embrace, and the moral balance of Mat found new expression within the Christian narrative of salvation, divine incarnation, and eternal life. Early Christian communities often settled near temple precincts or repurposed sacred spaces, where rituals once intended to honor Egyptian gods were reinterpreted through a Christian lens, blending familiar ceremonial forms with emergent theological imperatives. Some scholars suggest that this syncretism was not mere imitation but a conscious strategy to preserve continuity for believers navigating a rapidly changing world. Monasticism, which emerged in the deserts of Egypt, reflected echoes of earlier ascetic practices, meditative disciplines, and spiritual hierarchies cultivated within temple complexes, while the production of illuminated manuscripts and religious iconography drew on techniques honed for millennia by Egyptian scribes and artists. Simultaneously, imperial policies sought to suppress the old religions, closing temples, prohibiting festivals, and erasing hieroglyphs. Yet these acts of erasure could never fully extinguish memory. Secret knowledge persisted in whispered stories, in texts hidden away in the continuity of ritual gestures, leaving traces that would later inspire medieval scholars, Renaissance mystics, and modern archaeologists alike. Through the careful documentation of Greek and Roman historians, the translation of Coptic texts, and the rediscovery of monumental inscriptions, the rich mosaic of Egyptian religious thought could be glimpsed once more, revealing an intricate system that spanned morality, cosmology, magic, and a human quest for immortality. And yet, even as Christianity became dominant and Islam later reshaped the cultural and religious landscape, the legacy of Egypt's mythic imagination endured, influencing ethical concepts, symbolic imagery, and philosophical reflection across the Mediterranean and beyond. The question remains: how did a civilization whose temples and gods were slowly silenced, managed to imprint its vision of life, death, and the divine so deeply upon the consciousness of the world. As we reflect on this enduring resonance, we realize that Egyptian mythology was never merely a collection of old stories, but a living framework for understanding existence itself, a guide for navigating the mysteries of mortality and the eternal, a whisper from the past that continues to echo in the human desire to find meaning amidst a vast, unknowable universe. The story is far from over, and as we move into the final chapter of this journey, we confront the ultimate question of legacy, memory, and the power of myth to transcend time. And now, as we arrive at the final chapter of our journey through the timeless currents of Egyptian mythology, sit back, relax, and let your mind drift through the corridors of temples long silent, beneath ceilings painted with the movements of stars that guided both mortals and gods. For over 3 millennia, the Nile nurtured a civilization whose understanding of life, death, and the cosmos reached staggering sophistication, weaving together creation myths, divine genealogies, moral codes, and cosmic cycles into a cohesive vision that guided rulers, priests, and ordinary people alike. From the enigmatic rise of Atum in the primeval waters of Nun to the eternal struggle between Horus and Seth, from the protective embrace of Isis to the judgment of the dead under the vigilant eye of Osiris, Egyptian religion offered a framework for understanding not only the natural world, but the moral and spiritual dimensions of human existence. Temples like Dendera and Edfu, with walls inscribed in painstaking hieroglyphs and chambers filled with sacred implements, preserved this knowledge against the erosions of time, conquest, and cultural transformation, acting as both repositories and laboratories of religious thought, astronomical observation, and artistic mastery. Even as foreign influences arrived, Greek philosophy, Roman administration, and later Christian and Islamic rule, these traditions adapted and persisted, leaving traces in monastic practices, magical texts, and iconography that crossed centuries and continents. Some researchers believe that the very survival of these myths, filtered through texts, artifacts, and oral traditions, allowed humanity to glimpse the mindset of a civilization that regarded the world as a delicate balance of order and chaos, life and death, matter and spirit. Others suggest that the fascination with Egyptian religion, enduring into the Renaissance, modern archaeology, and popular culture, speaks to the universality of its themes: resurrection, divine justice, cosmic harmony, and the pursuit of eternal wisdom. As we reflect on these mysteries, one cannot help but wonder how the silent temples, the preserved texts, and the haunting images of gods with animal heads managed to convey such a powerful vision across millennia, influencing not only the Mediterranean world but the very foundations of Western thought. The story of Egyptian mythology is, in essence, the story of human curiosity and the desire to understand the unseen, the eternal, the forces that govern life and death. Though the last hieroglyph was carved over 16 centuries ago, the legacy endures, whispering in our art, our literature, our philosophy, and in the quiet fascination we feel when we peer into the mysteries of the ancient world. And so, the tale concludes not with an ending, but with an invitation to imagine, to wonder, and to recognize that the gods of the Nile, though long gone from their temples, continue to shape the way we think about the universe, life, and the eternal journey of the human soul.